take your seats. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Jean McFeeters. I'm the president of the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce, and I was asked this evening to serve in the role of moderator for this debate, for which I'm very thankful. I think it's really important for democracy to flourish that there be evenings like this, and I am thankful for the opportunity to participate. I'm a resident of the town of Caroline. I have no dog in this fight, but I do know, I think 4 of the people running very well, and I like them all. And so let me just do a few things about the rules, and then I will introduce the candidates. So first of all, we're going to firehouse. I'm going to tell you where the exits are. The exits are there, and in the back. The restrooms are back here. If you need to, just feel free to walk around the candidates. I want to also thank the Dryden Democratic and Republican town committees for sponsoring this debate this evening, particularly Jim Crawford and Jim Gustafson, who've done a lot of work to put it together, and the Dryden Grange and the Dryden Rotary Club for co-sponsoring this. I think you've all understood the system. Those coming in, I'll explain. There are some blue cards on some tables and also up at the corner of this table. If you want to ask a question, start now. You need to write your question down on those blue cards.
There's also white cards in the back.
And there are some white cards in the back. You need to get them up to this table where they're going to sort them into 4 issue areas of zoning, gas drilling, town budget, and general town issues. My job is going to be to synthesize those questions into questions that I will ask of the candidates. I'm going to introduce the candidates now. And then to have them take a seat for a moment while I explain some of the rules of how this is going to work this evening. So, running for the town council are Linda Levine and Joe Solomon, and then Deb Shigley and Jim Drew. Running for supervisor are Marianne Sumner and Bruno Schickel, who are in the middle of the table. So just have a seat for a minute while I run through some of the rules for this evening. So this is how this is going to work. This debate is scheduled for 90 minutes, and I'm going to do my darndest to get you out of here by 9:05, which is going to be, like I say, herding gazelles. We are going to leap merrily through these questions, okay? I told you how the issue areas and told you how they're going to be distributed. Each question will be asked of both supervisor candidates. They will each have 1 minute to answer. Each question will also, the same question will be asked of the 2 town board candidates from each party. And I have no idea how they're going to do this, but they are going to decide amongst themselves who's going to answer that question in 1 minute. Or they could divide the time equally between themselves. I can ask follow-up questions at my discretion, allowing equal time for both parties. Candidates can bring written notes. There's no electronic media or visual aids. I love that. It's a visual aid. I know, it's not. That is written notes. Just don't throw them at people. Okay. Please, no campaign signs or demonstrations will be allowed in the hall this evening. If you want to, and I would really ask you to think about this. I'm going to ask you to limit your applause to the end of when we get to the end of a question area, which will be about every 18 minutes. And the reason I ask you to do that is we have a lot of stuff we want to get through tonight. So if you do that and you cooperate in that way, we'll get more questions asked and answered. Those are the rules. So we are going to start now by having opening statements of 1 minute from each candidate. And I'm going to start by asking.
How about a pledge of allegiance?
We could have a pledge of allegiance. With a group like that? Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to alternate how this goes throughout the evening. I had tossed a coin beforehand, and we are going to start the candidate statements this evening with the Republican Party. and then we will go to the Democratic Party. So it will be Bruno, then Mary Ann, then the two town council members, then the two town council members, okay? Thank you. So Bruno, you're up. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to do one thing. Let me introduce Don Scott and show you how the timer is going to work. So Don, it's running down to from 5 seconds. When it flashes, you're done. You flash it red, you stop. It has to be on and power.
I guess everybody can hear me. Okay. Well, first of all, let me thank Jean for moderating this debate. I appreciate this very, very much. And I want to welcome everybody here. I think this is wonderful. I think this is a perfect example of democracy at work. And I welcome the opportunity to speak with everybody. I'm Bruno Schickel. I am a lifelong resident of Dryden. I grew up on Ferguson Road on a dairy farm, and I'm very happy that my mom is here with us today. And she has lived there since 1947. And so it's really great. And I'm here with my wife, Amy Dickinson. We have 5 lovely daughters and 1 granddaughter, and we're very happy to be living here with among all of you. I am a builder and have a construction company here in Dryden, and I've been at it for a long, long time. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to lead you as town supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mary Ann.
Thank you all for coming. I know it's interesting, I think, to see so many people interested in town government. We probably all have our favorite national news shows, but it's hard to get information about local government. And so thank you for coming and learning more about us. We've tried to make more information available to you online and on our website and in person and in newsletters, but it's not enough. I know more and more of you are coming to town board meetings, and that's wonderful. And you know, there are more town board meetings than there used to be. What used to be a once-a-month event is now at least 2 a month, and usually 3 or 4. There are plenty of opportunities to come and speak to us or listen to us. I wonder, just out of curiosity, a show of hands of people here who don't already know me or Bruno. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Welcome. I hope you learned something. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Deb Shigley. I've lived in the town for about 20 years now. Grew up just outside of Boston. Came here 20 years ago for a slower lifestyle, and I think we found it. My husband's here. He's been a member of the fire department for over 20 years. I was a volunteer firefighter and EMS chief for 14 years. Very involved in the community always. I'm currently the Vacation Bible School and Sunday School director at my church, which is over in Cortland. I work at Cornell University, where I've been for 20 years in human resources. Mostly I do employee relations and programming, training, and that keeps me busy. Before that, I was in cash management in manufacturing before I came here. I've been asked why I want to run, and I need to say I'm not a politician. I'm just a citizen, just like you, who wants to take part in our town board.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Joe Solomon, and a little bit background, just in case those of you that don't know me. I grew up in the Syracuse area. I graduated from Cornell, graduated from Syracuse University, and moved here over 10 years ago. I am a civil engineer by trade. I have my professional engineer's license, and my main area of concentration is bridge design, bridge inspection. I live on Etna Road with my daughter, and yeah, a good reason why we're all here, why we're all up here is that we, all of us, want the chance to represent you in the town of Dryden. I've enjoyed and I'm proud of the tenure I've had and the accomplishments I've had over the past 4 years. And it is my wish to help you and the town guide you through the next 4 years. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Drew. I live up on Yellow Barn Road. I've been here just short of 20 years. We've raised our kids here. They went through the public schools. I've been a 20-year veteran, well, actually 18-year veteran of the Dryden Fire Department. I'm an officer here. Have been that for 16 years. I know a lot of people in this community. I've made a lot of friends in this community because of what we've done to help solve problems as fire departments and emergency responders. Right now, we're facing fiscal emergencies in the state. We're facing them here on the local level. I think that it's about time that we start looking at these and taking them seriously to make sure that our futures are going to be safe, that our homes are going to be safe, that we're going to be able to afford to live in Dryden and have a wonderful future. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm running for the board. I hope you understand that. I hope you appreciate your home as much as I do mine and yours. And we look forward to helping you guys out in the future. I know I have 10 seconds left, but I really don't need them.
Linda. There. Thanks.
I'm Linda Levine. I've lived in the town of Dryden for 43 years. First above a store on Main Street that was tree forms, where the semis downshifted for the lights so you couldn't hear the TV over the shaking. Then in a lovely rented house in Etna, owned by the Harringtons, and finally our own home of 36 years on Ringwood Road, where my husband Buzz and I raised 2 wonderful children, Ari and Jenny. I guess I should add one more, perhaps, our first experience of living in Dryden, and that was the 3 months we lived with Martha Ferger and John. And welcome, Martha, and we miss you, John. I teach child development at Cortland State and have for 40 years. I'm really pretty boring. Same job, same house. I mostly teach teachers, and that makes me aware of the effect of communities on how children turn out and how important it is that we have that community. I like to solve problems. I'm very cheap. I won't waste anyone's money. I drive a 95 Honda.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We're going to go right to the most contentious issue first, because, and I think probably the most contentious issue at the moment is gas drilling. At least reading the signs, that's what I think. So let me see, there's a lot of questions here, and I'm going to try to ask them. Everyone, as I said, the town supervisor candidates will get 1 minute to answer, and then the 2 town board candidates working together will figure out an answer in 1 minute as well. So you'll all get the same question. I'm going to combine 2 questions here because I think it sort of talks about the feelings of the that are coming forth in the community. First of all, do you support gas drilling or the town's current position? And secondly, deal with this. Specifically, how do you balance prosperity for a few versus destruction of the current rural beauty of lifestyle for the rest of us? That's one side of that question. Or do you favor a choice for landowners to lease their land for hydrofracking, or no choice with the town making the decision? This is a very large question, and it's hard, but I really want to try to get all of that in there. What's your opinion, and how do you justify it, I think, is really the question. In 60 seconds or less while standing on 1 foot. Okay, so this is first going to go to Mary Ann, then to Bruno, then back that way. Mary Ann.
I've been studying the gas drilling issue for about 3 years now, pretty closely. And the more I've learned about it, the more I've realized that it simply is not harmonious with the kind of development that we have in Dryden. I strongly oppose inviting the gas industry here at this time. Wait a second, there was a part B, I'm sorry.
How do you justify that?
Thank you. Of course, we favor property rights, and sadly, this issue has brought to the forefront the conflict between people's right to sell their resources and people's right to the quiet enjoyment of their homes. It's been a tough debate. It's been a tough discussion, but I feel strongly that we came down on the right side. as you know, our zoning has never allowed that kind of heavy industrial use, and at least for now, we want to continue that way. Thank you.
Bruno.
Thank you. Marianne, I'm glad that you respect people's property rights. I think that's a good place to start, and I think it really gets to the heart of the issue, that we have to find a balance. We have to find a balance in this nation and in our community. The nation has a need for energy. We all use gas. And we have got to come together. Our community needs to have an opportunity to prosper. We need to grow and prosper. That's a legitimate right that people, a community has. And landowners, property owners need to have the right to the value underneath their ground. And these things have got to be balanced. And I think that we can. I think that we can seek a balance between these. We have to balance all those needs against the need for a safe, clean environment. I want to keep a safe, clean environment. I think New York State, and I hope we get a chance to take this more, is working on heading in that direction of good regulations.
Thank you.
No, wait, just let's clear this up. Wait, before the time starts. Wait, we get to choose whether we each spend 30 seconds in a soundbite, or half a soundbite, or one.
Or one of you can take 1 minute.
Okay, all right. And
Right.
I would just add that there are some things that the current town board members are not in a position to answer because of the involvement in the lawsuit. So that limits some of the things that they can say. Oh, wait a minute, I wasn't talking yet. I'm sorry. Okay, I think I'm going to take the whole shebang.
Okay.
I want to say something about property rights. I believe in property rights. I own property. Let's start with the fact that the town of Dryden is now worth over $1 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars in values assets. Of that over $1 billion, 3/4 are houses, less than 4-unit houses. So 3/4 of $1 billion ride on whether or not the residential property values of Dryden can be maintained. We can look at places in Pennsylvania and in Texas and know that there are places where people have lost 90% of the value of their property because it was now embedded in an industrial zone from which they were earning nothing or had lost the use of water in their house. Therefore, property rights, if we lose the value of our homes, for most of us, it is our entire life savings. You should be very careful to know whether or not you are protecting your property rights.
Thank you, and that's passes down.
Thank you. Actually, I really applaud everybody who has all the concerns for what's going on with the possibility of well drilling in the town of Dryden. It's a wonderful thing to see so many concerned people. The only drawback is the only authority in the state of New York about mineral rights is still truly only the DEC. And the DEC is the people who really need to hear the voices of everybody in the town of Dryden who have these concerns. And they are valid concerns in many regards. But you can't take that away from the state. It is only state authority. As a result of that, the local ban really has no warrant for doing that. It's purely a state issue. Yes, it would be nice if I could pick what goes in my backyard or somebody else's backyard. But that's not our authority when it comes to drilling and well drilling. Now, New York State, the only authority, DEC, the one that is charged with that authority, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is doing everything to start looking at it as well. The DEC has modified their rules several times over the last years to make them more stringent, and they're continuing to do so. Sorry I don't have longer to answer your question, but that's it.
Thank you. We have time here for, I think, about 2 more questions about fracking. I think the next one I'm going to ask is about the lawsuit itself. The town has now been sued, as I understand, by a drilling company. And I'd like to ask, how are you going to deal with that? Where is the funding from that going to come from in the future to both sides? So, well, yeah, this will go to Bruno first.
Okay. First of all, regarding the gas ban that was voted and put into place in the town of Dryden, my position is that it was completely unnecessary for the taxpayers of Dryden to have to foot the bill to answer a legitimate legal question. It's legitimate. The courts, everybody recognizes the court's going to decide this. And they needed a test case to go through the courts in order to get this question of what exactly do municipalities have in terms of authority over this? Can they actually ban it? I think it's a legitimate question that needs to be resolved. I support resolving that question. I do not support the taxpayers of Dryden having to foot $150,000 to $200,000 to take this from the Supreme Court to the Appellate Division to the through the Court of Appeals. I think it was premature, unnecessary, and it's going to be very expensive.
Thank you. I couldn't agree less. It was it was not premature. As more and more people came to the town to ask us to do something to stop gas drilling, we took them more and more seriously. As the deadline for the DEC issuing the generic environmental impact statement drew near, and we knew that that might mean a very short window of opportunity before they started issuing permits, we knew we had to clarify our existing prohibition against drilling. That's all we did. If the gas company had looked at the zoning prior to this, they would have known that it was not permitted. So we just wanted to make that clearer. How are we dealing with the lawsuit? I think this is, I don't see our town attorney here, but I've been instructed to say we are defending ourselves vigorously. This particular phase is very narrow and will not be terribly difficult or expensive to defend. And we have had many offers from other organizations and law firms for some financial support and legal support. Thank you.
I guess my concern is if we were simply clarifying an existing prohibition, then why did we need to make a big deal of it? If it was already on the books, couldn't it have just stayed there? Couldn't we have stayed under the radar and let other areas put that big word ban out there? If it's clearly there, then why did we have to do something else? I'm concerned about gas drilling, just like I think every other resident. We want a clean environment, and that's foremost in all of our minds. I do believe, however, that the state has the decision. They will make the decision, and it's our job to manage that in the best way possible for the town of Dryden.
It sounds like the other side thinks that we should be scared and not exercise our democratic will. We did not opt to be sued. Henry Kramer invited us to be sued, and you can read Martha Robertson's article on that coming out in the paper. We did this to protect that billion-dollar investment that I just told you about, and the lifestyles and quality of life of our children in the town of Dryden, so that they can ride their bikes freely and not be hit by the drunken drivers described in today's Ithaca Journal in North Dakota and Pennsylvania. Moreover, we do have local rights. Senator Seward knows we have local rights. He has put forth a bill for it. Check out the website of Greg Ball, who is a wonderful Tea Party person who is outstanding at talking about our rights as citizens to defend ourselves against this. This is not a partisan issue. We are protecting ourselves, and it is our obligation and legal right. They are lying about this being the state's power.
Thank you. I think I'm going to finish this section up with one question, which is about the future as this continues. How would you deal with an issue, let's say 10 years from now, if there was safer fracking? What would be safer, and what would you consider that? Someone mentioned that people have talked about a conservative approach. Basically, what would make you change your mind about the current situation in terms of the ban and consider something else? And this one starts with Mary Ann.
Well, we're working on that already. Last month, the town board asked the planning board to review existing research and evaluate criteria or develop criteria by which we might decide where or when any heavy industrial use could be considered in the town of Dryden. 10 years from now, it's amazing the things that we couldn't visualize 10 years ago. So, you know, certainly we're not saying anything's forever. But as long as this is the intensity of industrial use that it is, as long as it generates 100 additional truck trips a day and it brings in hundreds of workers from out of state and occupies all our rental housing, driving up the prices of rental housing, as long as there's a fairly substantial risk of toxic accidents, we're not gonna allow it. Who decides what life is like in the town of Dryden? Us, or 1,000 pages of state regulations, or a handful of multinational corporations? Thanks.
I think earlier, Gene, you talked about this, what I would consider a false choice. Destroying the environment, getting the gas, or living in a nice, beautiful area. I think it's a false choice. And I think the state correctly put a moratorium into place. I think they're going very slowly, very incrementally in developing tough regulations. We still don't know what they are, but by all indications, they're moving in a very positive direction. They haven't finalized them. I think we need to see what those are when they come out. We need to see and assure that they have aggressive enforcement followed by and inspection. And if they don't, they shouldn't be doing it. I think it's an open question whether they move forward or not. And I, for one, don't want to prejudge what they're doing. I think we need to see them. I support tough regulations followed by aggressive enforcement and inspection. And I think if we do that, I think we can seek and find that balance that we need to find to move forward into the future. Thank you.
Sure, it's, I can do that. Really the question is, what would in the future make you reconsider the town's current position if there was, about the ban on drilling?
To bring you up to light, I am opposed to the hydrofracking, but to answer the question, similar to what has brought us to this position today, residents as well as members of the town board educated themselves on this matter fully, and through various public meetings came to the decision at this point, hydrofracking is not good for the town of Dryden. Now 10 years from now, who knows what methods they will be used to take the gas out of Mother Earth. But until we know exactly how that is done, the residents or the town board, again, will have that power to change this decision. But not until we know exactly how and what is put into the earth to extract this gas. I think the clarifications to our zoning law should continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, this is kind of an interesting question because it really begs one of fracking versus hydrofracking. So there are safe methods of doing fracking right now. It's called propane fracking. It's the one that nobody seems to want to talk about. That's where they use liquid propane. They inject it into the ground. As the liquid propane actually expands, it does a fracturing. That liquid propane turns to gas and is then retrieved from the bottom of the wells, is rebottled and used 100% again and again and again. That is inherently a lot safer than the idea of polluting groundwater by putting chemicals into the water stream. And I understand that. So I think there are safe methods. And I believe the DEC is looking at those. I believe the EPA is looking at those. And those are extensively used in the country of Canada right now because of their concerns for their environment. So I think that's part of the issue. The other issue we need to understand is that this state does not have heavy industry. Heavy industry is reserved for states like Delaware, where they've actually defined it. It's not defined here in New York. This is a construction project that's not as intense as a lot of other construction projects that occur daily.
Thank you. We are now, that has ended the section on gas drilling, and we are moving on to zoning. I wanted to say I see some seats. I feel like I'm in, church. There are a couple of seats up here in the front. If you have a seat that's empty next to you, would you raise your hand in case anybody wants to come and have a seat? If you don't want to sit next to you, that's okay. That's right. We won't take any new questions about fracking. We're moving on to zoning. And it'll be hard for me to get a zoning one in right now, but if you have one about the town budget or general town issues, feel free to bring it up. Okay, this is going to start with Bruno, and let me ask you this question. It's about zoning. Should the town pay just compensation when it takes away people's property to protect other people? If not, why not?
I think it comes back to the old issue of balance. And I think that if you look at the case laws surrounding zoning, there has to be a relationship between what is the regulations that are being put on and the risks that you're trying to deal with. There has to be this balance. And you cannot take away, the court has ruled, the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled, that you cannot take away 100% of the use of somebody's property. And so that you simply can't, because let's say Dryden decides, there's a 100-acre farm, and we want it to stay a 100-acre farm. We don't want it to ever be used for anything but just to sit there. And they zone it and say nothing can happen there. That's against the law. It's simply against the law. That would be a taking. The town would have to compensate the landowner for that. And the Supreme Court has ruled on that. It's very clear.
Mary Ann?
Well, the issue of taking is settled law, and I think Bruno was on the right track. That the government cannot take 100% of the value of a property without compensation. That doesn't apply in any way to any kind of zoning proposal in the town that we've ever talked about. None of us bought our property for the sole purpose of gas drilling. So our property has value whether or not we extract the gas, and of course the gas is always there, and sometime in the future you certainly may have the opportunity to recover that. But the idea of taking, and certainly as you understand legally, taking 100% of the value of a property is a very high bar. We're nowhere near that.
As I understand the question, it's should the town pay compensation when it takes away property? And I think the answer is yes. If you have a loss of your property, if the town's taking your property, you purchased it, if we take it for whatever reason, we owe the property owner compensation for that. And I agree with Mary Ann on this, that we aren't at a place where we're taking 100%, but should the ban stay in place? I think a lot of property owners have questions about whether or not they would have a loss because they could not release the gas. And I think that might be the question. And I do think compensation should be paid in that instance.
Yeah. The question was, should the town pay just compensation when it takes away people's property to protect other people?
Okay, so this is really a phony question. First of all, this is not, N-O-T, not, a taking. I have this on good authority from my son, who is a lawyer. And it is not a taking by any standard, so this is a red herring. Secondly, What am I losing if I was promised in my residential zone in Dryden that I would have nothing but residential and agricultural and other conservation uses on Ringwood Road? What is taken from me, if I might use that word loosely, when I no longer have quiet or clean air or any of the other things that were promised to me as a function of zoning in Dryden?
Just quickly to add, it seems like what the question is talking about is eminent domain, and that does not exist within the town of Dryden. It is simply a question of zoning. And our laws are very clear, and they are, you can read those on the website. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I have another question. This one will start, I think, with Mary Ann. I'm right. The new proposed zoning seems to favor low density in the conservation district with larger lot sizes and many restrictions. The rural residence and rural agricultural districts are allowed a much higher density with smaller lot sizes. Do you feel that these new zoning regulations follow the guidelines set out in the comprehensive plan? And what would you like changed in the new zoning? The new zoning seems to favor lower density in the conservation district with larger lot sizes and some restrictions. The rural residence and rural agricultural districts are allowed a much higher density with smaller lot sizes. Do you feel that these new zoning regulations follow the guidelines set out in the comprehensive plan? And what would you like changed in the new zoning law?
That's a great question.
It was typed.
Wait, in that case, I know who that came from. And thank you, Craig. The new zoning is really interesting, and it was driven by adherence to the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2005. There are now, our current zoning has 4 different districts. The new zoning has, I think it's 7 districts with very carefully defined descriptions of what each district is intended, what purpose each district is intended to serve. Conservation, clearly, is about natural assets. The lot sizes in any district are governed more by health department rules for septic systems than they are by anything we put on paper. You need, not our rule, health department rule, it generally takes 2 acres to separate your well sufficiently from your septic system. But besides which, conservation districts are intended to conserve natural areas for their own right.
The proposed zoning law, which the town paid $215,000 to an outside consultant to create, and it has largely been scrapped. I mean, they kept changing it and changing it and changing it. It was totally unworkable for a rural community like our own. It was more appropriate for a community close to a big urban area with a lot of development pressure. It really didn't work here. We also spent $22,000 on the town's attorney, extraordinary to the budget, to review this document that was a complete mess. The bottom line is, it was going to create large lot suburban sprawl and not deal with the comprehensive plan, the vision in the comprehensive plan, which was to create density in the village, hamlet, and nodal areas, which I support. I think it was a good plan in the comprehensive plan, but sadly it was not into the zoning. Thank you.
Yes, I do believe our current zoning does correspond to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan states that the town of Dryden should protect and expand its open spaces. Our current zoning does do that as well. Where are these open spaces and unique natural areas and critical environmental areas? They are in a conservation zone. Hence, you need to protect those. Hence, maybe lot sizes will be bigger there because they have unique qualities about them that the town, through the comprehensive plan and through our zoning, deem necessary to save. Thank you.
I've got 10 seconds to say quickly, we actually did a survey that showed that the residents of the town of Dryden wanted this, that they wanted to protect those green areas and their residential areas. And it's not much to spend the amount of money that we just heard to protect a $1 billion investment. It's nice to know we have a plan for our $1 billion investment.
Thank you. Okay, the timekeeper's getting feisty. Love that. Okay, we have, I think, one more question. Oh, I'm sorry. I've lost my mind.
A mind is a terrible thing to lose. I'd like to just make one mention about the 2 acres to do a residence on. I'm a registered architect. I've been in business for 31 years, and I can tell you without a problem, you can design a fully duplicated septic system and well system on a piece of property 3/4 of an acre or less if it's properly planned. So why should you force people into 2-acre zoning? It's not necessary. But I will tell you this, I am for rewriting the current zoning ordinance because it is old and it does need to reflect more what the comprehensive plan said. So I'm absolutely for that. But to go through and say that things can't be done is kind of silly when they can be done with smaller amounts of land. My neighborhood is not a 1-acre, 2-acre property. There's 73 houses on Yellow Barn and Ferguson Road, right in my neighborhood. All of them fit in less than 1 acre. All of them have septic systems. And each one of those you could still drop a well in. Fortunately, we do have a water system up there. But you could still drop a well in and meet every requirement of the health code to do that. And we do it regularly.
Thank you. I'm going to try to, I'm going to give you a choice here. This is a little, it's like one from column A and one from column Roman numeral 2. Okay. because there's a question that a lot of people have asked, and I don't think it will take you that long to answer it. And then I figured I'd give you time to answer the other one, which is, one question is, do you have any business interests which conflict with which would conflict with your position, particularly regards zoning, and perhaps the ban on hydrofracking? If so, how do you deal with that? I think that will be quick. And then the other one is, why should more than half the town be in a conservation zone? Those have nothing to do with each other, but I'm asking them together, because I have the power.
I don't, although I'm a builder, I have no developments in the town of Dryden, and I rarely develop. I have a development project over in Brooktondale that you might be familiar with. So I don't think there's a conflict at all there. As far as gas drilling, I do own property in the town of Dryden. I do not have gas lease on that land. I had an opportunity to, and I chose not to. And I think that was the right thing for me to do. And I was happy I did it. What was the last part of your question, Jean?
Why should more than half the town be in a conservation zone?
I think that's a mistake. I really do. I think that what's happened is they've created sort of, they painted the town with a broad brush and unnecessarily restricted areas. And I think it's wrong-headed. I think that we have to adopt a model which says we want to create density, greater density, in the villages, in the hamlets, in the nodal areas. That will naturally take the pressure off the outer lying areas.
Thank you.
I don't do business in the town of Dryden. I was retired for a minute there before I became supervisor. And I own a piece of property. I don't think there's any possible conflict there. So, happy to go on. I'm not sure what the proportions are of the amount of land in the conservation district, but keep in mind, first of all, it's not a bad thing to designate a conservation district. It happens that there are a disproportional number of unique natural areas or sensitive environmental areas in the town of Dryden. A lot of wetlands, a lot of creeks, some very steep slopes in the southeast part of town. They simply are, valuable natural assets. And Linda was right that the survey showed that Dryden residents want to maintain those assets. So 50% in conservation districts. 40.
Yeah, this says more than half, but I have no idea if that's accurate, so.
Okay, well, I don't think so.
Okay.
I sold real estate in Dryden for 10 years. I stopped selling real estate about 3 years ago, and I did that as part-time, so I have no business conflicts in the town of Dryden. With regard to the conservation area, I think we're all in favor of conserving our natural special places. I think the issue is when you label a large amount of space as conservation area, and then on top of that, they've identified what's referred to as a critical environmental areas, and that's 65% of the town. It gets very difficult to provide the knowledge and understanding and not have that get in the way of property owners' rights again. So that's my concern.
Theoretically, yes, I do have a conflict of interest. Being an architect and having to do projects in the town of Dryden that may have a permitting issue, I do. I've talked to State Office of Ethics, and I have a clear understanding of what my abilities and roles are.
I'd just like to correct a figure there. The CEA's critical environmental area is 42% in the town of Dryden. But to answer the first question, no, I do not do business in Dryden, and no, I have no conflict of interest within the town of Dryden. But talk about the conservation zone again. If you look at the conservation zone, the primary things you can do in a conservation zone is agriculture and residential. You know, so that no way impedes upon this question at all.
Okay. First of all, I guess as an outsider, and this is the first time I've run for office since high school in 1963, I'm not sure who the they is here. I don't think that the board is closed to all of us talking to them about this. The board is nonpartisan. It is composed of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. And if people have input about this zoning issue, I assume we're allowed to input it. I live in a conservation district, apparently. I don't think anyone wants to build there.
Okay, thank you. I will repeat that in case people didn't hear. Linda said that she had no conflicting interests. But you have issues. Okay, that concludes our section on zoning. And we are moving on to the budget. Okay, here's an interesting opening question on this. Please define your personal tipping point where taxes can't be raised and government just has to do with less. I think this is sort of apropos, considering the situation that the state government has put us in with the 2% tax cap. So how do you deal with that situation? And that question goes to Marianne, I think. Is that right? Yes.
Thank you. It's an interesting question. Tipping point. We haven't raised the tax rate in the town of Dryden for the 6 years that I've been involved in town government. And it seems like every year we talk about, oh, no, we can't take that on this year because, you know, we want to keep the tax rate level. The tax levy, of course, does rise as assessment rises, but we have been able to manage to cling to that tax rate. I'm deeply immersed in the budget right now. We expect to have a final draft on Friday or Tuesday. And we cut every year. Can we say that $1.44 per thousand is our limit for taxes? Probably not. It's the second lowest tax rate in Tompkins County. But it's working for us very well. I think we can plan within that for the foreseeable future.
I think the tipping point is a good analogy. Unfortunately, the town of Dryden, since 2008 to 2010, increased spending 27%, actually 29.7%, excuse me, in actual money spent. And I got this from the annual update documents that are filed with the state. And you go right down through the funds. And that's what's happened. And in that same period of time, 2008 to 2010, revenues are actually coming down. The drop between 2008 to 2010 was 6.5%. So you have this situation where revenues have flatlined, mainly because of the economy. It's true the tax rate has remained stable, thank goodness, but most of the revenue in the top four funds, the highway and general funds and the outside funds that go with them, are from the economy. And I'll explain that later.
I guess I have a little bit of a problem with tipping point. Since I've been on a board, we haven't had that occur, so I haven't had that experience about trying to decide on what a tipping point is. As Marianne has told you, we've kept the tax rates the same over the past 6 years and the 4 years since I've been here. We looked long and hard at the budget, and asked the departments to cut where they can so that, we can reduce the cost to the town. What I see is that we have become more responsible spenders. Our fund balances are strong, and we really look at how the town spends their money. I guess it's just we're all a little bit, Scrooges. But I really enjoy going through the budget and looking it through and, trying to save town of Dryden money.
Gene, I'm going to take this follow-up question as well.
Okay.
I think one of the things that's been going on, and I've been very concerned about, is the deficit spending that's been happening. From 2008 to 2010,
Oh.
actual deficit.
I'm sorry,
Yes, you can. Absolutely. Absolutely can.
Okay, we'll just ask you to do it in another question. Sorry. We're created between the two town chairs, so.
I would say that my personal tipping point, which was the question, really doesn't have to do with the tax rate going up, although that certainly is a concern of every taxpayer. And I certainly appreciate frugality and keeping the tax rate down. The tax assessments have gone up, however, so there certainly is more money out of my pocket, and that's of concern. So whether the tax rate goes up or the assessment goes up, the money is still more, I'm spending more money. The other side of that is a real concern about the town's budget going up and the revenues going down. And you can look at it on the website and you can pull the information yourself, but it's there, it's factual, it's the truth, and you should know about it. We can't continue spending more than we take in.
Okay. I think I'm going to ask a sort of a follow-up question about this because if I look at the cards, I have a lot of questions about is there a deficit? Has there been deficit spending going on, or has there been are there really reserves? Have the reserves gone down? Have they not? So I will ask people to discuss that because there is no real question. I think people who are currently on the town council can answer in one way, and people who aren't really have other questions. So it's really about this issue, which has come forth in many of these cards about have you been spending your seed corn, I think, or have you not? Bruno.
Okay, the budget is made up of the three top funds, which are the general and highway, and then the general and highway outside funds. Then it's made up of special districts, and those special districts are like the ambulance, fire, lighting districts, and sewer districts, and water districts, and the like. Those things in those special districts are very carefully controlled. Money cannot move from one fund to another. That is sort of sacrosanct. The town is not broke, and I don't want to get anybody to have that impression. We have money, but we're spending it at an alarming rate, and we're spending down our reserves at an alarming rate. And just to put it in some perspective, in 2008, at the end, in those top 4 funds, we had $8.4 million in the bank. At the end of 2010, this is actual, we had just under $6 million. That's a drop of, I believe, 30%. This year, we are budgeted to spend another $2.7 million in that amount of money.
This is difficult to explain in the time limits, I must tell you, because the terminology is not that simple. I think when Bruno refers to, I'm not sure if you called it reserves, but there are 3 concepts here. There's income and expenses. There's unexpended fund balance. That's if you don't spend all your money every year, it's left over in this fund balance. We think of that as a checking account. I think that's what Bruno was referring to, although he called it reserves. One of the reasons that the unexpended fund balance went down is that the state guideline, the state controller's guideline for fund balance is 16% of annual expenditures. Excuse me, the A fund that Bruno refers to most often, the largest operating fund, had a balance of 200% of annual expenditures. So in 2009, we announced a plan. We had public meetings. It was covered in the newspaper. We had a plan to reduce the balance of that fund. We reduced it by transferring quite a bit of money to reserve funds, which are dedicated savings accounts. We have the unexpended fund balance, the checking account, and the reserves, which are savings accounts for specific purposes, going up.
Thanks.
I think the item that really becomes of concern to me when you look at this is not only the fact that the expenditures have gone up over time, revenues have come down over time. As Bruno indicated, we went from $4.4 million worth of revenues down to $4.1 million worth of revenues, but our spending went up from $4.6 million to $6 million. We've went up basically, $1.4 million in expenditures in 2 years without raising the taxes. That money had to come from somewhere. And when you look at the fund balances, whether allocated or unallocated over that period of time, they keep showing reduction and reduction and reduction. Yes, there are certain expenditures that come out of that, but when you have gone from $5.7 million worth of fund balances down to something that's going to be underneath of $1 million, that money has been spent so that we didn't have to pay taxes the last several years. That's also a problem. Is if we keep going at that spending, we're going to run out of money, and then we are all going to have to get hit with that same tax to keep that spending up, or something has to be done to control that spending.
I would like to read you a message from David Makar, whose seat I am running to take. He wrote, "We also invested by protecting your money and creating and endowing money into long-term funds." This is what Mary Ann is telling us. "When I started," that is Dave, "on the town board, our A fund had a single account. Think of it as your checking account with every asset you owned in one single place, one debit card. Through 5 years of budget negotiations, all passed unanimously and by a bipartisan board, we protected millions by establishing reserve accounts for the Highway Department, DPW, farmland protection, future buildings, and long-term recreation. Your money was not wasted or mismanaged. The disingenuous message from the Dryden Republicans would make you believe that I, as a business person, and Steve Stellick, as a business person, wasted your money. Please do not be fooled by these stories. Your money is safe." Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you. I hope that got at a lot of the questions that were asked here. The final question that I'm going to ask in the budget area is really, what would you spend the money on? And I'll give you some of the kind of questions to get a flavor. People are sort of asking why there have been a lot of consultants hired. Is that, why should we spend your money there? Or is there a reason that there's been more money spent on planning? So I guess my question to people is, talk about those, and then talk about what you think the town needs to spend money on in the next 2 to 4 years. And this goes to Bruno first. Is that right? Mary Ann, I'm sorry, I didn't cross it off. Thanks.
This is one of many reasons why it's hard to understand the budget without some history of the detail. The consultants question is easy. We hire consultants when that's less expensive than hiring staff members. If we have a project like planning that has, I admit it's gone on a little longer than we intended, but it wouldn't be practical to hire staff to do something like that, we hired consultants because it's less expensive. What would we like to spend money on over the long haul? I think one of the most important reserve funds that we were able to start this year was for recreation facilities. We, as part of our survey, as part of our resident survey that went into the comprehensive plan and part of our recreation master plan survey, we got a really good idea of what kinds of recreation opportunities people would like to see in the town of Dryden. We're fortunate enough to own a substantial piece of land behind the town hall, and we are beginning to develop a concept plan for that meeting. For that land, there is a meeting next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, in the town hall to describe that conceptual plan.
We should not be breaking the tax cap. And I think we have to start at that premise. And my understanding is that the board has begun the process of doing just that, enabling them to break the tax cap. I think that's a mistake. I think we have to live within our means, and we have to set the priorities carefully so that we stop the deficit spending and return to a pattern of fiscal responsibility. One of the things that you got to realize, it's very important, only $1,200,000 comes from property tax that goes into the general fund and the highway fund. Yet they're projected this year to spend $6.5 million in those top 4 funds. The result is most of that money is coming from things that you would talk about the economic engine, sales tax revenue, mortgage, the mortgage tax, state aid, things like this, fees. It's a real problem.
Question?
The question really was, why has the town spent money on certain things like consultants or planning, and what would you spend money on over the next 2 to 4 years?
Mary Ann's correct. We do hire consultants when it's cheaper, and also when our current staff does not have that expertise. We also hire consultants. Cost is rising because healthcare is rising. Healthcare is rising greatly. The percentage of healthcare we pay for a good portion of our cost is due to healthcare. What would I spend it on? I agree with Mary Ann. We put those fund balances in there so that we can have a town-wide recreation area. We added a little farmer's area for people to come and do some plantings when they can. And we fund the recreation department where hopefully my child would be there when she becomes of age, but I know many other people who have children, whether it's football, basketball, lacrosse, or cheerleading, and stuff like soccer. But that's where I would like to spend our money.
Mary Ann mentioned that the town spent money on consultants when they didn't have the expertise. She specifically referred to planning. And I do have to question, we have had significant increase in the planning department. I believe it's gone from a building department of 3 to a planning department of up to 10 people. I know some of those are part-time, so it's not 10 full-time positions, but there's been significant growth in the planning department. So I question why we have needed all of that growth in the planning department and we hired a consultant to do the planning. So that's a question of mine that I don't have an answer for. What would I spend the money on? I think that we need to look at lowering the burden of the property owners by helping business development in the town of Dryden. And I think some of that's being done now, but I think we need to do more of it.
Yes.
Thank you. We are moving on to the 4th issue area, which is general questions, of which there is a magnificent variety here. So, I'm going to ask a couple of these together, because I think there'll be time to answer them in 1 minute, if you talk really fast. So, how would you pitch the Dryden community to an interested business investor as a great place to start his or her business? And before running for office, what did you do for a living that would assist in serving in your position? I know those are disparate, but I think you can answer them in 1 minute.
I think that growing a balanced tax base is critical. As we move forward, we got to have employers, we got to have retail, we got to have businesses as well as residential. We have to have both. And that way, the burden of the tax base is not all on residential. I think that's important. I think the zoning has to be business friendly in terms of creating the flexibility so that we can be innovative, so a business coming in can be innovative. And I don't think it is now. I think we do a lot of planning, but we do very little doing. And one of the things, my background is, I'm a builder. I was a farmer when I was a kid, I'm a builder now. I am about getting things done. That's what I do. I build things. I build beautiful things. And I love what I do. And I think that I can bring that talent to Dryden in a positive way.
Well, I will say planning is one of the things town government is, especially well suited for. It really is not local government or any government's job to do the businesses or do the building. But it's difficult for developers to get together and plan because they're in competition. It's difficult for neighbors to get together and plan because they're busy. So planning is actually one thing town government does very well. And I think we're planning pretty well for business development. We have at the moment a new light manufacturing concern, rehabbing a building and about to open and offer 50 new jobs in the town of Dryden. We have a hops farm under construction on Route 13, a hops farm and microbrewery. And there's one more. Oh, and Cortland Produce was recently able to expand to Ithaca in the facility that Ithaca Produce sold when they went out of business. So that's all right at this moment. I think that's a pretty good record of business development. I was a business director at the Hangar Theater and an administrator for a not-for-profit mental health agency before I came here. My management experience has been very valuable.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Dryden is a great place to start a business. I started my own here. That's one way to do it, start your own business. So I encourage that to anybody who has the gumption and want to get up and do it. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, but you can make it work. I've been in business on my own for 10 years as an architect. I do have a regular job also, because in this day and age, it takes 2 jobs to raise a family. I'll also tell you that the zoning in this town needs to be a proper tool. And zoning is supposed to be a tool, not a weapon to hit people over the head with. And if it's a proper tool and it's set up right, it will encourage development. It will encourage business. It will encourage growth, and in a controlled fashion, and in controlled locations. That's what zoning ordinances should do for us. I will tell you that, yes, I've done a lot of things to prepare for this position. I am currently the chairman of the board of directors for the Dryden Fire Department right here. I've been a board of directors member here for 10 years. We work within a very tight constraint of budget, and we have to do that every year with more and more massive requirements for us to spend money that we don't have under mandates. So yes, I think I am prepared to do this job.
Yeah, you can each say something if you want. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my business experience, I suppose, is limited to the fact that my husband and I own rental property and have managed that, mostly him, but with me as a helper for about 40 years now. My job in teaching teachers at Cortland State certainly helps me to be a problem solver and to understand communities and the needs of people, because that's what we teach teachers about, how to help our children. In that, it's very important to me that children have access to outdoor spaces, to an appreciation of God's nature. So hunting and fishing, kayaking, canoeing, swimming, hiking trails, the freedom to ride bikes on safe roads, absent fracking trucks. all of those things make our children strong and healthy, and I do know something about that. So I would be happy to compliment Joe's engineering ability and Steve's business acumen, and the same of Mary Ann's, and bring what I have to bear to it.
Okay. This is a question, I think, really dealing with recreation. I understand that you have this meeting coming up about this recreation facility next week. And someone has sort of asked a question about, do you have a public discussion on this? So the questions are, what's the source of town funds for such a project? Where would matching grant monies come from? And then I'm going to add on to that, recreation is known to increase child health and enjoyment of life. What would you do with money allocated for the recreation department? So that's sort of all tied in together. And then there's a question here that says childhood obesity is a problem in America today. How can we improve the childhood obesity rate in Dryden? I think all of those sort of tie together. It's about recreation, the role of town government, where does money come from to provide help for those issues. Yep, it's yours.
Those are, again, good questions. Yes, recreation is not just about having fun. It's definitely about health and quality of life. I'm happy to say that our current recreation department was a nice emphasis, a nice balanced emphasis on recreation for all ages. It's not all about youth sports anymore. The facility that we're looking at, we'll be talking about in the meeting next week, is in its very early stages of planning. We've just begun to save money for it. As you probably have heard, our town hall was built in 2006. $2.5 million paid for it with our savings. So we have now begun to save for a recreation facility, which we view as perhaps a 15, 20-year timeline. I forgot if there was another question.
I'm concerned about the plan that they have for this centralized facility behind the town hall. I think Dryden is a big community. We're 10 miles by 10 miles roughly, 100 square miles. I think it's a mistake to centralize our recreation. I think we're made up of a lot of unique little areas and little communities, and I think we have to build a plan that will reinforce and strengthen that as opposed to a centralized location. I also think, though, I'm very supportive of the Rails to Trails program. I really am. I think this would be the sort of thing that could interconnect our communities be able to go from Dryden to Ithaca on a safe, bikeable, walkable, hikeable trail. We could go from Freeville to Groton, Freeville to McLean. I mean, I think the time has come. We've been talking about it. I think we got to stop thinking about it. We've got to start doing it.
To start off, the money for the conceptual plan for their recreation facility, proposed recreation facility, as our recreational director stated, it was from the state. It was funded totally by the state, so we do not owe anything for that. Again, it is in the early conceptual stages. Again, what I would envision is, yes, there would be a locally based recreation area here. However, we still have numerous fields and playgrounds throughout the town, which we still need to keep on maintaining and develop even more. Because I know that Etna, every year they put in and they add another climbing toy for the children there, which is great. And I believe, you know, the Howlett Hill Community Center there, they renovated their pool. You know, they have a craft fair there. Down in Etna, you know, they also have craft fairs there. I mean, recreation isn't just about playing fields. It's about just getting everybody involved.
I agree with Joe 100% on his last statement. Recreation is about getting everyone involved, but I do have concerns about a building up by the town hall. I'm very concerned about that. I would rather look to have money that's available spent to finish projects that we've started, like the trail, and add to the communities, provide them some support to develop things in the communities so that people on the other side of town, out in the far reaches of Freeville, Etna, wherever they are, can be better supported.
Okay.
Do I get a few more seconds?
No. Nice try, though. Okay, I amuse myself. What can I say? And for the last question in this area, I'm gonna give you a choice of 3 because these are, I think, quick to answer. One of you could choose one of you could choose another. These are, what can the town do to help support farmers and local agriculture? What are you going to do about getting a stoplight at the Dryden High School middle school entrance? And what's your position on openness and transparency in government? Though frankly, I think it's hard for anyone to say anything except, yeah, I mean, what are you going to say? I'm against it, but you know, there it is. It's a challenge. It's a challenge question. You get extra points. Okay. So I think that starts with Bruno. Yep. Choose a question. Or
I
answer
just
all
want to
3.
make sure you had the farmers,
Farmers.
high school light.
High school light.
And
Position on openness and transparency in government.
I'm for openness and transparency. And I'm sure everybody here will second that. As far as the light at the school, I think that's a state highway, and I think that's something that we're going to have to take up with the state. As far as the farmers are concerned, and I think being a farmer, having grown up on a farm, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And farmers are struggling. And I've seen in my 55 years here, I've seen farming decline. And with the decline of farming, we lose all the beautiful vistas and views and this beautiful agricultural landscaping that we all love. It's vitally important that the farmers prosper, because that is what we enjoy and we drive through every single day. And that's why we love being here, because the farmers are like our gardeners.
I'll try to do 2 quickly so I can emphasize one. We do have a farmland protection plan in place, and we do work with ag and markets to help protect farmland. Essentially, it's a valuable resource, just as gas and oil is. Our agricultural lands are precious. The stoplight at the high school, unfortunately, is a state highway. We have been talking to them. We will continue to talk to them about the importance of a light there, but it's hard to persuade them. You know, once again, who has control over our town, us or, you know, them? Transparency in government is a topic dear to my heart. It's sure we're all for it, but it actually takes a lot of work. It's not enough to say, sure, our meetings are open. We try to get the agendas out in advance. We try to get people involved in the discussion. We're actually personally reaching out to people to bring people into government, and I hope we continue to do more of that. It's a thrill to see so many people interested now, and man, it's a whole new life when you have no secrets at all.
Oh, this is a fairly easy one. The stoplight at the high school, being the health and safety coordinator for the local schools, I can tell you for years, I'm talking 4 superintendents, they've been trying to get a light there. The state doesn't want to give them one. They don't want to give you one either, apparently. But we do know that according to the state, you have to have enough deaths at some intersections in order to drive a light. We haven't had one, thank God for that. I will tell you the more important place for a stoplight would be right at the bottom of Turkey Hill Road. So the Varner Fire Department can get out onto Turkey Hill Road and respond to fires without having to worry about traffic. I will tell you that's a safer place to put a light because they've already had one major accident where a chief of fire department had a broken back as a result of an accident. So that to me is a little bit more important than even at the high school right now. I will also tell you though, when you look at transparency in government, you can never have enough transparency in government. No matter what you do, there's going to be things people just won't understand. You can put it all in black and white and nobody will fully understand it. As much as everybody would like to try, and we will all try, you're going to hear a yes from everybody. It's just going to be hard to understand some days.
So I guess I drive every day from Ringwood Road to Cortland to my job, and I can't tell you how much I love the scenery and the farms. And so that's nice from the outside. Clearly there are some things we can't fix locally. Ethanol, for example, as a federal policy, has raised the cost of feed for the dairy herds that produce the milk around here. It would be nice if we could do something about that, but it's not in our control locally. Certainly we can get involved on a federal basis in doing that. I think that the PDR, the Purchase of Development Rights, has been a really important thing that this board has helped along because the state takes way too long to get the money here. In the meantime, the farmers are hung out to dry while they're waiting for their benefits. And I think that the board has done a marvelous job so far of forwarding that money, advancing that money so that we could take advantage of the state's largesse in supporting farmers with those purchase development rights.
Okay. I have to apologize to the audience. I told you you could applaud at the end of each section, and I denied you your right to applaud. So now's the time. We are now going to have closing statements from all 6 candidates, and they get 2 minutes each. I know. Go crazy. Yeah, don't get bored. So we began this today with Bruno, and we're going to now start with Marianne.
So many topics, so little time. I guess I do want to emphasize at the end the 6 years that I've been doing this and the experience I've gained. Man, I had no idea when I started. I often tell the story about at the first campaign event, somebody asked me, where does our water come from and where does it go? I have a well and septic system, so I was kind of in the dark about that. Now I'm on the governing committee of Bolton Point Water Supply for the west side of town and the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Plant. I'm also on the Council of Governments, the Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council, the Healthcare Consortium. Oh, I should mention that. Joe said that one of the factors driving our rising costs is skyrocketing health insurance costs. We've had Teamsters health insurance since about 2000, and last year, 2009, the cost increased about it was around 20%. And it was continuing. So the Council of Governments worked very hard. I worked with the Council of Governments very hard to understand health insurance enough to form this consortium for local municipalities to pool a self-funded insurance plan that has saved the town of Dryden so far, just this year, about $8,000. Would have been more, except the Teamsters opted not to join the plan this year. Next year's the last year that they'll have that option, so we'll start to see, well, I call it savings, but at least a slowing of the growth in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $20,000. Doing what we can to control the costs we have some control over. So the point is that I've developed a wide and strong network with other elected officials, with other agencies, and learned, excuse me, a tremendous amount over the past 6 years, and I look forward to putting that experience to use for another 2 years. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. I found this invigorating, and I humbly ask for your support and your vote on November 8th. I believe that my combination of leadership, experience, business know-how can provide the framework to move Dryden in a direction that we truly can create a more beautiful, more affordable future for Dryden, for everybody in Dryden. And I think we do that by doing a lot of different things. Good leadership isn't made up of a couple key decisions. Good leadership is 10,000 little decisions that add up. The budgeting is critical. We have got to change the direction of deficit spending that we've been doing the last 3 years. If we don't, we are going to be facing an enormous tax increase. And I don't want that to happen. I think we have to protect the tax cap. I really do. I think that should be our organizing principle that we approach the budgeting with, that we will not break that, and we will stop deficit spending. We can do a lot of things if we work together. I think we can get the trail system built. I think we can raise private donations, private funds for that. I use as an example the fountain in downtown Dryden between the two churches. A wonderful woman gave a $50,000 gift to get that built. I think there are other wonderful people out there. I think that we can help the farmers prosper. I think that we need to create a climate in which everybody can prosper. And again, it's little decisions, one by one, that'll make that happen. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know if I can handle 2 whole minutes. Okay, well, as I said, have not run for office since high school, and I think I won that election. I came to running for this one because of one issue in particular. I thought the town board was doing just fine without me otherwise, and that issue certainly was fracking. There are too many tragic stories of people who signed leases and now cannot actually build an addition to their house because Anschutz won't let them. So let's talk about property rights when we talk about fracking. My neighbors cannot sell their 100 acres on Ringwood Road and their house and retire to their grandchildren and the warm, sunny South because no one will buy their house because of the lease. I wish to be very conservative. I wish to proceed in a clearly structured, step-by-step way where the infrastructure is set up before we dive in foolishly and disrupt a century of hard work in building Dryden. I see that this affects people in all walks of life. When I go door to door, I don't discriminate against Republicans. It is not a partisan issue. Everyone thanks me for caring about this issue. Republicans, blanks, independents, Democrats. They all thank me. I would guess that 90% of the people in Dryden fully understand that their investment in their house is going to suffer, that 5% of us might actually profit from this, and we, the other 95%, lose. This is a shared vision. The current board worked very hard for it. I'm not a one-party, one-story issue. I believe in lots of other things, but I do want to say that this is not a normal election. It is a referendum on bullies with billions forcing their will on the people of Dryden. A large turnout will show us that this land, indivisible under God, with liberty and justice for all, is not for sale to the highest bidder.
There are many issues to manage in a town the size of Dryden, as Linda mentioned. None of them are easy or simple. The town budget is a huge document requiring careful review and understanding many different funds, how they can be utilized. However, deficit spending must be stopped. Concerns regarding gas drilling in our town are real. And I agree, this is not a partisan issue. Those are real concerns. It's important for us to understand the current processes used, the impact it could have on our town, while working with the state regulations that will directly impact our ability to manage gas drilling. I don't think there are some people certainly who want to see gas drilling come. I do believe that the state is going to make a decision on that, but they are doing it very carefully. They put out regulations almost 3 years ago, and people like you and me complained about them. We said, you're not ready, they don't make sense, you don't have the regulatory means in place to manage them. And they took them back, and they're looking at them, and they're looking at them carefully. And my hope is the same as Linda's, that when they bring them back out, that they will have a much more concise and enforceable plan. Other areas of concern, are appropriate recreation areas that will be well used by many across the entire town. Balanced funding for our fire department and EMS, which each year they have to deal with increased regulations and training requirements, adding a burden to their budgets. And finally, increasing our tax base through business development to allow for more even distribution of the heavy tax load. Thank you, and I look forward to receiving your vote on November 8th.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I have just thoroughly enjoyed my last 4 years on serving the town of Dryden. It's been educational, and it's been truly, truly my pleasure. I look forward to it. I've learned from many people around me about it, but when it comes down to it, it's doing what's best for the town of Dryden. And I think the leadership we have can take us there. What I've learned is from being a town board member is to look at each issue individually. Look at each issue individually. Take all the information you can from that and come to an honest and truthful decision on that. Whether it be the budget, we are not deficit spending, as our books will show. Whether it be recreation, we want to develop things throughout the town, not just here. And the hydrofracking situation, where we are acting within the best interests of the town. Again, my name is Joe Solomon, and it has been my pleasure to serve on the town board for the past 4 years. I'm not a great public speaker. And so I will end my 2 minutes at, yes, I am the engineer. That's why I got into engineering, so I didn't have to write or speak. But thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. McFeeters. Appreciate it. And please do get out and vote.
Thanks.
Well, again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I hope you guys go and tell everybody what you've heard. I hope you express your opinions and you make them heard to everybody, all of your elected officials, all of the candidates, and everybody in the town. It's important that we become a community once again. What has probably hurt me most of anything is in the last several years, I've seen factions, I've seen fractions, I've seen our town starting to become minor communities within the town. We need to get back to being a community, the town of Dryden. We have some tools that we can put that back together with. We have this new zoning opportunity to come forward and make that better for us. We have to work together to create a budget that we can all work with. We have to live within our means. We all have to do that on a daily basis. And we're no different. We understand that. We all do it in our homes. Nobody up here is any different. We put our pants on one leg at a time. The problem, though, is this world is you can pay me now or you can pay me later. The problem is if we keep spending and spending and spending, we don't get it under control, if we don't come up with a long-range plan, a long-range idea, a long-range vision for the town of Dryden, we will never get there. We will be paying a heavier burden than we all can afford to do. I love this community. I've been here 20 years. I've raised my family. I've made some wonderful friends, as I said. I've enjoyed serving this community in the fire department. I would hope that you guys would put your trust in me and put me on the town board to also be your other eyes, to be your ears, and to think clearly. I'm a person who analyzes before I will speak. I will gather as much information as possible. I have been nailed to the wall because everybody said, well, Mr. Drew, are you for or against fracking? Because the answer isn't that clear. It's not black and white. Nothing in this world is that black and white. If we all understand that, we all understand what we can and what we cannot do, there's a lot more that we can do than what we cannot. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we end tonight, I have just a few announcements. One is that there will be a second debate on November 1st, which is a Tuesday, at 7:30 p.m. at the Varna Community Center, and Bruce Estes of the Ithaca Journal will be the moderator that evening. And then I have a group of people to thank. First of all, our timekeeper. Secondly, I want to thank the gyms. Kim Gustafson and Jim for organizing this event this evening. I want to thank all of you for coming, for your questions. I hope I gave them some justice. It was difficult to get them all in, but I tried. Thank you. And I want to thank all the candidates for their optimism in running. You know, it is a very difficult thing to serve in public office, and we only really operate because people are willing to step up and do that. So thank you for doing that. And to all of you, please go and vote on Tuesday, November 8th. The polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Thank you, and good evening.